I am Erin, and I live here in Austin, Texas. I spent the bulk of my career acting both in theater, film, TV, and heavily in commercials. With every single job I have ever had, including this one, I have second guessed whether or not I deserved it. It was not as easy of a transition as I think you would assume it would be for an actor.
Erin Ashcroft is a voice and presentation coach on our team at Jenni Steck Voice and Speech Services. She has a degree in theater from SMU, has performed in regional theaters across Dallas, Minnesota, Austin, Los Angeles, as well as doing film and TV, voiceover, commercial work in Miami. Uh, Now back in Austin, she brings that performance background into coaching executives, leaders, professionals who want to communicate with more confidence and less fear. Erin, that's just a very brief introduction. I'd love for you just to take a second to tell us in your own words what brought you to this point.
Hi, yes, well, I am Erin, and I live here in Austin, Texas, and I got here through you, thankfully. We have a very long history together. We met at SMU many, many years ago when we were both training to be theater actors. And like you just said, I spent the bulk of my career acting both in theater, film, TV, and heavily in commercials. Towards the end of my career, I started doing some voiceover work. And around that time, we moved our family back to Austin, Texas. We wanted to be closer to my family who live in Dallas. And I thought I would continue acting when I moved home, and I found that I didn't miss it. And my kids were at an age where I was very involved in their lives. And so I sort of settled into being a volunteer and being a parent full time. And now I'm in a new phase. I'm starting to be close to the empty nesting part of my life. And you had reached out and offered me a job with your company. I was hesitant at first because I didn't think that I had the skill set in a corporate environment, but you convinced me, and I'm so glad I said yes because I'm really enjoying being a part of your team.
I am so glad you said yes, because
Thank
everything
you.
that we have learned in our training and background as performers translates so well. I mean, understanding presence, understanding those signals that you're sending through your nonverbal communication. I mean, that's all we studied for years. So
Yeah,
I think it is an incredibly useful bit of knowledge and background. And I'm so
I
glad you
can.
said yes.
I
And
completely
your
agree.
clients are glad too, I know, because I
Well, I
hear
hope
from them.
so.
Well, let me start with a couple of questions.
Yes.
Starting a little bit more with your background, digging into that a little bit deeper. You also served on, and probably still do serve on nonprofit boards,
Yeah.
and you've served as a moderator for large group discussions with panels and stakeholders. And that is a different kind of stage. So that's not you coaching, that's you applying all of your
Yes.
knowledge into this very different kind of atmosphere where it's you. You're not pretending to be someone else. What did stepping into that role teach you about communication and performance?
Well, it's really interesting because when I first started taking on these larger volunteer opportunities, I didn't anticipate being expected to speak to large groups of people, large stakeholders, community member meetings. And I will admit it was very intimidating because I think you might agree with me, as an actor, you can hide behind your character. So when you're on stage, while there might be some nerves around giving a great performance, I'm not nervous for myself as a human or how I'm being perceived because I'm playing a role. And so when I was expected to speak in front of large panels or community members or stakeholders as myself, I was extremely intimidated. And I sort of had to use my actor brain and say, say I'm speaking as the PTA president. I would literally say to myself, okay, well, how does a PTA president act? And then I would act that way. So I sort of had to trick my brain into being okay with me being myself on stage. Now, once I did it more and more frequently, obviously I became much more comfortable doing that, but it was not as easy of a transition as I think you would assume it would be for an actor to step into that public speaking role.
And I would imagine, I know some of my clients are this way, probably some of your clients are this way. They similarly are moving into a position where they have to communicate. They have to lead the meetings. They have
Right.
to talk to clients, prospects, stakeholders, board members,
Yeah.
and it can be really uncomfortable if that's not anything you've had to do before. And it's like people
Absolutely.
think, oh, well, you're talented in this one area. Surely talking to the board about that will be fine.
Right. And you're right. It doesn't translate for most people, right? I mean, even somebody like me who's used to being on stage in one capacity, translating that to being a public figure and being myself in a room and leading a meeting is a much different environment. So just because you have one skill set at your job doesn't mean it's going to translate in you being able to command the space with executive presence just because you are an executive.
Okay. We're going to get into executive presence because I want to talk about what that is, what's the expectation, and how do you help with that. Um, you and I have had discussions about something that you're seeing a lot with your clients, and I think maybe this overlaps with this idea of executive presence, is maybe this self-doubt that creeps in, this idea
Yeah,
that everyone expects me to be able to present my ideas or the ideas of the company, but I feel like I'm not qualified to do that.
right.
That's a term that's being, we hear it all the time now, is this idea of imposter syndrome, and you have a particular passion for these clients. Can you talk to me about um, what it actually looks like in the clients that you work with? Do
Yeah.
they do they actually recognize that what they're dealing with is imposter syndrome? Is that something that you educate them about, or what does that look like for you?
So yeah, you hit the nail on the head, right? So it's this tendency to second guess whether or not they actually belong in the role or the leadership position they suddenly find themselves in. And they usually find themselves there because they deserve it. They have done the work, they have proven themselves. But this imposter syndrome is this idea of self-doubt, second guessing that you are actually the right person in the right role. And I don't think that people do actually know that they're suffering from imposter syndrome. They're just overcome with terrible self-doubt, right? And so not only are they doubting themselves, they're afraid that they're going to be found out, like that their colleagues are suddenly going to reveal their inadequacies. And it's self-imposed, this self-doubt, right? And so it's usually through conversation that that is revealed to me from the client, when they sort of talk about what is inhibiting them, what is holding them back from bringing their best self to their presentations. That's how we usually figure out that they're suffering from this imposter syndrome or self-doubt or anxiety around really being the right person for the job.
That's really interesting. How do you tease apart the cause of the anxiety? Because many people will come to us and say, "Oh, I'm nervous about public
Right,
speaking." How do you
right.
know if it's generalized anxiety
Sure.
because that's just a huge fear for people versus imposter syndrome? What are the kinds of questions that you ask?
So usually it's on an intake form. We will ask, or a one-on-one conversation. We're asking what they're feeling when they're presenting, what feedback they're getting from people in the room, from their superiors, from their peers. And the self-doubt piece is usually revealed fairly quickly when I say, what is causing the anxiety that you might be feeling? And they reveal, well, I'm new to this job. I don't know that I'm the right fit for it. I've had a client who was on a panel with two other panelists that he was so impressed by that he thought there's no way I am at the same caliber as those two presenters. So while he felt confident with who he was as a person, he was comparing himself to his fellow panelists and then imposing this self-doubt upon himself. So I don't know that most people that have imposter syndrome know that. It's asking where the anxiety comes from. Is it just from being in front of people, or is it this kind of hamster wheel running in the back of your head that's spinning while you're presenting? You're sort of self-judging yourself. That's very different from people in the audience judging you. If you're judging yourself while you're presenting, you can't even be present. So I think we sort of have to have a conversation to figure out where the anxiety comes from. Of course, there is overlap. You're going to have people who are anxious about being in front of people and also anxious that they are the right person to be in front of these people, right? So there's definitely overlap.
Is is this sounds funny to say, but the way that that shows up in their delivery
Mm-hmm.
might be the same.
100%.
And is I'll put in air quotes, treatment the same, no matter where the anxiety is coming from? Or how do you Does it
So
matter if it's general anxiety or imposter syndrome?
I think the initial treatment is the same. I think that you and I both like to start with learning breath work, learning
Mm.
how to access breathing from your diaphragm, because at a minimum, we're going to learn how to calm that fight or flight aspect in our body, right? That feeling that's rising up, that super anxious feeling that's sort of holding your breath in. So once we teach this breath work where they can sort of tamp down the fight or flight response from nerves, that's going to deal with generalized anxiety, and maybe it'll help with some of the anxiety of their self-doubt. And then for people who really are suffering from self-doubt, I like to add in a piece of a mantra. So we're really good at believing the bad things our brain tells us about ourselves, but I don't think we're as good at believing the good things our brain tells us about ourselves. So if we can introduce a mantra for whatever their specific issue is, I have value. I belong in this room. I have a voice and I have something to say. If we can distill a mantra down to really help them retrain their brain to reframe how they feel about themselves in the position that they're in, combine that with some breath work. So we have some breath work, we have a mantra. We're going to reframe how we think about ourselves.
That's incredible. I actually just heard an interview on another podcast with someone who was giving the numbers on that.
Okay,
How much of the good we believe versus how
right.
much of the bad, and how
Yes.
hard that is to break. So do you
It's
actually
really.
have do you actually have them write that down, or how do you use
Mhm.
that mantra? When do they use it?
So they will use that mantra, I hope, on a daily basis. So, my goal for people when I'm coaching is for them to work on breath work every single day, just so they can learn how to access this nice, deep, diaphragmatic breathing pattern that you and I both know leads to a really rich, lovely, resonant sounding voice, while at the same time learning how to calm the nervous system. So, ideally, they are practicing the breath work every single day. And then on top of that, I like them to play around with this idea of power poses, which this is something you taught me. You recommended this book, Presence, by Amy Cuddy, which I absolutely love. I think it is just an absolute Bible, especially for people who are suffering from imposter syndrome. But she talks about this idea of adopting power poses and sort of tricking the brain into believing you are more powerful than you think you are. And so there's three power poses. She has, this Wonder Woman with your hands on the hips. She has this victory power pose and a confident CEO. So I like for clients to adopt that pose. And while they're holding it, again, Amy Cuddy, the author of that book, says that if you hold that pose for 2 minutes a day, just 2 minutes a day, you lower your cortisol levels while at the same time increasing your testosterone levels. So that's great. We're retraining our body to feel powerful. So while holding that power pose, I like for the client to also either say or think the mantra. So if you're holding this Wonder Woman power pose and you're saying, I have a voice, I belong in this room, I think you can begin to retrain these thoughts and trick our body into think or trick our brain by using our body that we are more powerful than we might originally have thought.
One of the things I find so interesting about the power poses is that it makes you take up space.
Yes.
And just by nature of making yourself bigger, you can be perceived as being more authoritative, more powerful, but you also start to feel more powerful.
Yeah.
I have worked with clients, especially women, who have said, I never felt like I was allowed to take up space.
Right.
This feels so foreign to me to, have my arms away from my torso or to not sit with my legs crossed.
Yep.
Everything about female body language, to me, it seems, at least historically, makes us small, right? Crossing the legs, crossing the hands, crossing the arms, pulling into midline makes us small, diminishes us. Is that something
Yes.
that you see?
100%. And I would like to say I thought it was generational because I'm of a certain generation where the media taught us that we need to be physically small. And when you're physically small, usually your voice is small. Everything is small.
Mm,
Everything is meek. And I would like to think that that has changed, but I actually don't think that it has because many of the clients I work with are younger than me and they still have a hard time taking up space, letting their arms go, letting their stance widen, not crossing their bodies, not sucking in their stomachs, all of these things that restrict your breathing, right? So the more we can expand into our space, the more we can take a deep breath, the more we can physically be larger on a stage or in a room. I do think women in particular, like you just said, are prone due to the training of society to making themselves small. So teaching them to take up space takes time.
You mentioned sucking in your stomach.
Yeah.
Can you explain why that could be problematic?
Well, yes, because if we're sucking in our stomach, we don't have access to diaphragmatic breathing, right? And so if we're holding in our stomach, everything is coming from here. We have a really tight breath. We can't control our voice. It's going to be thinner, it's going to be higher, it's going to be less easy to control. And if you're holding in your stomach, you're probably being rigid everywhere else. So it's going to be very hard to expand the rest of your body if you're constricting, and holding your breath is constricting. And the secondary negative benefit of holding in your breath is you don't have access to your emotions. It's like when you're trying not to cry, you hold your breath. So if you're trying to be excited or em- really emphatic about something that you want to share with people, you can't really tap into those emotions if you're holding your breath back. If you really want to tap into your emotions, you have to be able to breathe and breathe fully with your diaphragm, which means your belly is going to have to be loose and not flat against your back.
It's interesting. There's kind of a balance. We're not saying, don't engage your core ever. Uh,
Mhm.
we kind of need a little bit of engagement to have good posture, or people are way into Pilates and yoga and all of that right now, and there is a lot of engagement of the core. What we're talking about is, I'm sure people who experience nerves know exactly what we're talking about, that kind of clenching. Um, it's Everybody holds tension in different places in their bodies. And I've definitely worked with people who were surprised to recognize that, wow, I really hold a lot in my belly.
Yeah. And again, especially for women, the physical conditioning of being told that we need to be small and have bodies that look a certain way, we tend to hold our stomachs tighter than maybe we need to. And again, it makes it just harder to access that nice, deep, full belly breathing if you're constantly holding your breath. And then you can only breathe to here because you're so busy holding your breath down low.
I find this to be a problem I see a lot with the on-camera talent that I coach, reporters, anchors, because we're all vain, and because they're wearing very, very fitted clothing, or
Mhm.
they're wearing some kind of, Spanx or something underneath to try to hold everything in. They really suck in conversation and interviews. They seem fine. Their voices are great. Trying to figure out, well, what is it that's happening when you go on camera? Many times they'll notice that, oh yeah, you know what? Right before we go live, I've noticed now that I'm sucking in. I'm
Yep.
holding my breath, and everything tenses up. And
Yeah,
it's exactly what you're saying. Mostly it's because they want to look small.
right. Yeah, and women are not the only one. I don't mean to say that only women suffer from this. As a woman, I just notice it in myself and with the women that I have worked with. And I'm sure men who care about what they look like deal with the exact same issue.
Yeah, even if they don't care what they look like, they
Right.
probably,
I
there's
mean,
like
we're
this
all conditioned.
instinctive, yes, exactly. This like instinctive tensing up and holding. That's a really great way to describe it. This holding the breath. That's
Yeah.
exactly what
And it's
happens.
you're and the holding of the breath is holding you back because again, it's constricting you. So it's constricting your body. You're not able to be as free physically because you are holding something. You are not releasing something.
Is it primarily a thought problem? By the time they come to you, is it a body problem? Is it a little bit of both?
Well, I do think it's primarily a thought problem that manifests in the body, right?
Mm.
So, which are like most problems. I mean, whatever we think of in our head is going to come out in our body. Like the body keeps the score, is, the book likes to tell us. So whatever we're thinking about, which is why I like the idea of the mantra, because if we can trick our brains into thinking that we are more confident than we actually are, then that's going to show through our body language. But yes, that's why the body is the first line of defense. I feel like with imposter syndrome, like if we can start learning how to take up more space in a chair, on a stage, However, you do that with widening your stance, keeping your feet flat on the floor, with using larger gestures, if we can teach that, again, we can maybe trick the brain into believing that we belong in this space and we deserve to take up the space with all of our body. We don't need to keep it all here.
Here's an interesting thought exercise for you.
Okay.
Is there a version of this preparation, these adjustments that you're talking about, that can look like over preparation? I mean, could it look like, okay, this is a person who rehearsed endlessly, still doesn't feel ready? Is that imposter syndrome? Is that something else?
I think over preparation is a component of imposter syndrome for sure. I think people who suffer from imposter syndrome, just from the little bit of research I did just to see what the greater world says about imposter syndrome, says that really high achieving individuals tend to suffer from this a lot. And those same individuals are prone to over preparedness, right? And I think of it like over preparedness, again, is like control, because there's so much self doubt. If I over prepare, if I prepare ad nauseum, I'm going to be able to control this. I'm going to be able to keep it perfect. It's another version of perfectionism. And so I think, again, we need to allow for a more relaxed idea of a presentation. Over preparing is not necessarily going to solve the problem because you cannot control all environments, right? So you need to allow the self doubt to subside and know that I am confident, I'm capable, I have a voice, I have something to share, and I can handle whatever this presentation throws at me, right? Because there's not everything that you can prepare for. So people who suffer from imposter syndrome, I think, absolutely do over prepare, and we need to teach them to sort of shy away from that. And again, tap into this idea that they are competent and qualified to be doing what they're doing.
I love this idea. It's hard for me to tell someone to practice less because I am really obsessed with helping people understand how to practice. But what I think I'm understanding, and I was just having a conversation with a mutual friend of ours about practice, in that you need to have the right kind of practice. For example, this friend of ours was also an actor and was saying, you could practice a play 10 hours a day for 6 months and it could still be terrible because you're not practicing in the right way. So maybe what we're helping people understand is there's one way to practice that's going to exacerbate these feelings of imposter syndrome. Is there something in that process of practice that is not really helping them? Do we show them a better way to practice that, as you said, maybe changes their perspective on what that presentation is, what it could look like for them?
Yes. So I think you're right. I think in terms of practice, when you are doing the over preparedness piece of that, they're looking, in my opinion, for perfection. And perfection doesn't exist because, like I just said, you cannot account for what's going to happen. So, yes, do you practice that you know your presentation, that you know your transitions, you have your intro, you have your conclusion, you have the framework, right? So you have that solid. And then you can get yourself through a presentation, but it doesn't have to be perfect. You have to allow for movement within the presentation. That's what you can't account for. A reaction from the audience, a slip up in technology. Something could happen that you need to be able to be fluid on your feet. So again, like I just said, you practice your intro, you practice your conclusion, you got these transitions, and that should be a nice base to get you through a presentation. But practicing for every single moment that could possibly arise isn't achievable, really.
It's almost like the practice, you should be practicing for those moments when something could happen. How do you react in a moment when something
Right,
isn't going as you
right,
thought it would?
right. Yes, and again, so that's where you can't be rigid. And so it goes all back to this idea of relaxing the body, relaxing the breath, making sure you're confident with your knowledge of what you're about to do, and being able to be fluid at the same time.
How do you feel about memorization? I'm imagining these clients you're talking about might try to memorize to get everything perfect and just how they want to say it.
So it's interesting because obviously coming from a theater background, memorization is what I had to rely on my entire career. And you're given a script and you really don't deviate from it. So my gut impulse is to like, memorization is great. But in the world that these people are inhabiting when they're presenting, memorization maybe doesn't make the most sense because, like I just said, you have to be fluid. And if you get off script from what they're trying to present to the audience, it could actually make things harder for them in the long run because it's a set way of presenting. And so I think, again, I don't mean to sound repetitive, but as long as you've really got these strong intros, these strong transitions, these strong conclusions, it allows yourself to move through a presentation without having to memorize every single component of the presentation.
I feel like I can see it when someone has memorized their presentation. It's almost like they're reading. They see it in their mind's eye and are almost reading to me.
Yes. And I think the other part of that, which I'm sure you've seen before, not only like you said, because they're reading, they have sort of a flat affect. Because if you're working from memorization, you're not able to add in the nuance, the pacing, the pitch, the pause for effect. You're really just kind of going through the information line by line and getting it out without the vocal nuance that we like to help people add.
And then it becomes very one-sided. It is
Yes.
presentational, less
Yes.
conversational. Feels like a book report.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's not
Which
as engaging. Yeah.
And I can understand for somebody who doesn't feel comfortable public speaking that that would be very scary because you are now relying on your brain to not memorize, but at the same time, make sure you hit all the pieces of information that you need to hit, which is why practice is important, but the over preparation doesn't actually prepare you for everything.
I want to go back to this idea of perfection because I think you're really
Yeah,
onto something that overachievers really struggle with is that striving for perfection. How do you help someone let go of that?
that is a really good question. As a perfectionist myself, I it's a hard thing to move past. I read somewhere that perfectionism is actually you're depressed because you realize there will never be perfection. So it's actually like if you're not that's the true definition of perfectionism. So it's actually unattainable. So I think as somebody who has battled perfectionism in my own life, I think acknowledging that perfect is unattainable and then coaching somebody through that is probably the best way to go about it because what is perfect to you and what is perfect to me and what is perfect to somebody in the audience are going to be three different things, right? So we need to find, do not, what's the line like you oh I you're giving up the good for the perfect, right?
Right?
And we need to maybe lean into that, right? There is no perfect. Let's be the best version of ourselves that we can be. And let me go back to that mantra. I have something to say. I have a voice. I'm here in this room and I want you to hear me. Lean into that. Lean into the message as opposed to the perfectionism of delivering the message.
Lean into the message reminds me of this other thing that we coach, which is this idea of intention. So, all
Yes.
of the things you've been describing around someone who deals with imposter syndrome, anxiety around public speaking, that kind of self monitoring,
Hmm.
to me, those are all telltale signs of an intention for the presentation or a mindset going into that presentation that is inward focused.
Yes.
It's something like, I need to prove I deserve to be here. I
Hmm.
don't want to mess up. I want to do a good job. I want to impress them. They're all kind of camera on me. And what you just described is helping them find a way to take that lens and focus outward through their intention. Maybe it's an additional kind of mantra that they go through right before they present. That's what am I trying to do to the audience? What do I need the audience to understand?
Absolutely. I think you're right. You need to focus the message outward. So, yes, we've talked about this before. Do I want to excite them? Do I want to encourage them? Do I want to warn them? So, yes, turning the intention outward is going to take the pressure off you and it's going to get the message much more clearly to the audience.
Because it feels more like a two-way conversation instead of me just spewing a lot of information at you.
Right. You're making a connection. You're connecting with the audience
Connecting.
over a shared interest. This is something that I am sharing with you, and I want you to feel a certain way about it. So I'm going to tell you in a way that makes you feel this way about it.
And it's hard for the brain to do two things at once. It's hard for me to be
Right.
really focused on helping you feel something while I'm also analyzing how fast am I speaking? Oh my God, I'm sweaty. Oh
Right.
my God, my mouth is dry. It's hard to focus on both of those things at the same time.
Right. Oh, that's so great. It's so true. And it reminds me of like when, as an actor, the second you start speaking, all the nerves go away because as an actor, we have goals, we have relationships that we're trying to create on stage. So taking that basic information and teaching that same skill set to somebody who's just speaking to a boardroom, I think can be hugely helpful.
How do you do that when you're speaking to a room of 200 or 300, where maybe the lights are in your face and you can't even see those people in the
So
audience? Is that
yeah,
worse or better?
so I personally like to see people, and I usually you can see two or three at least in the front row. And my advice is always to find there's always an audience member who wants to be a good audience member. I'm that audience member. I love making eye contact with a speaker. I want them to know that I see them, that I think they're doing a great job. And there's usually somebody in the audience who's giving you great eye contact feedback. And I always say, find those three people, find three people who are showing you that they're listening. And if you can connect with those three people, it feels like you're connecting to 200.
I love that. Uh, Going back to this idea of perfectionism reminded me of a conversation I had with Barry Nash. For those of you who listen to the podcast, I interviewed Barry very early on in this set of interviews, and he discussed with us some research his company has done about what audiences are actually looking for and what they respond to most positively. And they are not looking for perfection. They're looking for someone who is human. So they are more forgiving than I think the presenters expect. Audiences are more forgiving. They'll forgive a flub. They'll forgive a filler word here and there because they are also looking for connection.
Right,
And they want to see a human being up there, not a robot.
right. I completely agree with that. And like I just said, I think there are audience members that show you with their physical presence. I am rooting for you. I want you to be successful on that stage or in front of this boardroom. I'm rooting for you.
I remember being an actor and having that little bit of wisdom right there be some of the best advice I ever heard, which is that the people who are auditioning you want you to do well. They
Right.
want you to be the one. They're
Right.
rooting for you. And I
Yeah.
feel like audiences are probably the same way, right? They're hoping for you to do well. They're not waiting for you to fail.
Right. And there's also this component that I know you've talked about before, the whole idea of an audience mirroring the speaker. And so if a speaker comes on with this really intensely nervous energy, the audience starts to take that on. So if we can come out again, you might not feel it, but if you can come out acting confident, then they're going to throw confidence right back at you, right? They're going to you're going to mirror each other. And so you might not feel it, but again, we're going to trick our brain with our body language that we are confident, that we are powerful, and we have something vital to share with you.
What do you say to someone who is experiencing more fear when they are presenting internally to their team, to their peers, to their bosses? It seems to me there's like a different layer. It's almost harder for them than to present externally at a conference or to a prospective client.
I think that the most important thing, and you and I talk about this, or we talk about it as a company, is connection, right? So, however you can connect with that person, there's connecting with 200 people is one thing, and connecting one on one is another thing. So, if you can find a way to connect with the person to whom you're speaking over a shared story or a shared passion, if you can find a way to connect, I think it makes communication so much easier.
And if it's an internal team that they're speaking to, or as you said, maybe even one-on-one, maybe part of finding that area of connection is recognizing that your peers, I think there's just a fear of judgment, fear of I'm not going to be, again, that imposter syndrome starts to creep back in.
Yeah,
they're going to know I'm not as good as so and so. But if they're
right.
looking for connection, you're right, finding what's the value for this other person and what you have to say. How are you helping them? How
Right.
are you guiding them? Whatever it happens to be.
It goes back to what you were just saying. You have to take the pressure off yourself and put it in the relationship, right? So then it's about the connection between you and the person, and it's less about you. I love this idea that I've been told, people don't remember what you say to them, they remember how you make them feel. So if you can create a true connection with your internal team and really feel like you are somebody who hears their feedback, hears their concerns, hears whatever they have to say to you, if you make them feel heard, then you're creating a connection. So I think, again, that takes the pressure off all your self-judgment and puts it on, let's connect one on one, and I'm going to stop judging myself in the back of my head.
It's so hard. And
Yes, I
it
mean, this is
does
easier said than done.
absolutely. And it takes work. I mean, people come to us, I think, sometimes expecting to have one session, maybe two, and slam bam, thank you, ma'am, they're on their way and it's fixed.
Right.
And what would you say to someone who's curious about how long this process would take? What does this kind of coaching look like with you?
So I think it takes longer than people anticipate. Like you just said, I think people think there might be a few tricks up our sleeves that we can teach you that you can immediately incorporate into your world and all of a sudden become an incredible speaker. And it takes work, it takes practice, it takes breaking old habits and learning new habits. And then as you're breaking those old habits and learning new habits, you have to practice, 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 and create new muscle memory. So it does take a little longer than somebody might anticipate. And if they're willing to put in the work, yeah, in 4 to 6 weeks, you might have a totally different persona on stage because now you have confidence. You have a wide, expansive body that takes up space. You have a nice, rich voice that reaches the back of the room. You're able to use it pauses effectively to really land a point. I mean, but none of that comes easily. This is all slowly added in week by week and incorporated into whatever presentation they may or may be working on at the time.
And you may not feel that super confident, but at least you're coming across as being more confident because you
Absolutely.
understand what confidence looks like, sounds like.
Right.
What is Amy Cuddy says, fake it till you become it.
Fake it till you become it. She's a genius. I mean, it's true. I mean, if you can just by changing your physicality, if you will project more confidence. And again, like you just said, you might not feel it, but the person on the other side is not going to know that. What they are going to see is somebody who takes space, who sort of stakes their claim where they are in the room and says, "This is my message for you, and I want you to hear it."
I want to go back to your idea of the mantra again, because I love this idea. Um, I'm stealing from a gentleman I very much admire, Eric Potterat, Dr. Eric Potterat. He wrote a book called Learned Excellence. And one of the things he talks about in his book is having this idea of a almost like a walk-up song. So some
Yes.
kind of routine that you have
Right.
in place that you do every time you speak, let's say. For our world and what we do, we'll use that as our example. If you have someone struggling with imposter syndrome and you are giving them exercises and new ways of thinking about interacting with peers, with clients, it's a lot of information to take in. Do you, is there any value in helping them? Something that might help them quickly is some kind of checklist they could look at, like every time you're going into a call with your clients, go through this checklist. This is your walk-up song. Maybe it's actual music, something
Right.
that makes you feel, gets your mind and your body ready for what's about to happen.
Absolutely. I mean, going back to Amy Cuddy and the power poses, that is one thing I've told these
Okay.
clients that it's like go in the bathroom if you can, if you have 2 minutes before you go in somewhere and really just do your deep breaths and hold that power pose. And internally, you can be saying, I got this. I have a voice. I have a reason. I belong in this room. Just to psych yourself up. It's sort of like a walk up song. It's a walk up pose, I guess. You really just sort of whatever makes you feel powerful. That might, whatever makes you feel like your chest is up, your shoulders are back, your eyeline is high, and you are going to knock it out of the park. So whatever that does for you, if it's holding a power pose, if it's, doing wind sprints down the hall, whatever it is that makes you feel super powerful, do it, right? Because we're tricking the body into believing that we're rock stars.
Oh,
So for me,
yes.
this is sort of funny. What the last time I did a panel, I wanted to warm up my voice, but it was like a 20-minute drive to where I was going. And I love musical theater. So I put on my show tune playlist, and that's how I warmed up my voice. I was belting songs in my car, and I got to this panel, and I was like, oh, I feel really good. Like I just did a full concert in my car. And that was sort of my walk up song, like you're just talking about. Like I sang at the top of my lungs all the songs that make me feel really powerful. And then I walked into this presentation and I felt super confident.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things obviously that we do as coaches is we try to give them something practical.
Yes.
Here's some steps you can try. Here are the exercises you're going to do. And they're only going to work if you're consistent. So for this checklist, for example, or your walk-up song routine, one of the things I tell my clients is start with something that's small stakes. Just be consistent about it. If you don't have a huge presentation coming up, that doesn't matter. Do it on your weekly status update call. Just start small, taking those steps to incorporate it into your routine, to start making it a habit so that it is automatic for you.
Yeah. Absolutely. Going back to the breath work, when I start teaching clients this breath work idea, for me, I say every day in the morning, just take 5 minutes if you can. 5 minutes just to remind yourself how to breathe into your diaphragm so that later, in the middle of the day, when you have a status update, when you have a team meeting, you can tap into it because you've already tapped into it in the morning. You've reminded your body how you need to breathe to access this diaphragmatic breathing. So, yes, to your point. And then, of course, we have the, vocal warm up checklist that we try to tailor to each client based on what they're really working on the most. And so I have a general checklist and then I tailor it based on timeline. The client has 5 minutes, they have 15 minutes, what they're really trying to enhance in their delivery, and so forth.
Is there anything about the work that you do with them that surprises them?
Well, I do think that the amount of practice that's required might be surprising. Like we just alluded to, I think some people might think, oh, they're going to tell me a few tricks, look out the audience, imagine them naked, whatever they've heard in the past about how to become a good speaker and get over your nervousness. That there's a real protocol that we work on breath work. We work on physicality. We work on vocal training. We work on jaw, tongue, lip exercises. We work on pace, pitch, volume, resonance, gesture. I don't know that clients can anticipate sort of the breadth of what we go through to make them a whole better speaker. It's a whole body process, right? And so I think that is probably surprising. And then on top of that, because it's such new information, most likely, and new techniques and new exercises, the amount of practice that's going to be required might be a little bit surprising. And, you really can only affect change if you're going to put in the work. So I think the fact that we're going to expect them to be changing their muscle memory to learn these new techniques is probably the most surprising thing.
Do you get pushback?
Yes, I do think people do give pushback, especially when it comes to the breath work, because it feels so disconnected for them when they're coming to talk about vocal preparation and presentation skills. So I think the breath work part throws people for a loop. But once we explain that, this number one has the benefit of teaching you how to calm your nervous system, and number two is going to give you access to a rich voice in a way that you may have never anticipated achieving such a rich voice. They're they are more acquiescent, I guess is the word. But yes, there's absolutely pushback. Not with everyone, but I've had a couple clients like this is not my bag. And at that point, it's like, you know what? Let's try something else. Let's try adding in intention. Let's try adding in vocal range, pacing, emphasis, all these other things that make a presentation dynamic. And then we can work in little bits on the breath work throughout the process.
What do you think the reluctance is with the breath work? Well, first of all, can you explain what you mean by breath work for the people who are not familiar?
Yes. So, breath work is this idea that you are breathing with your diaphragm. So, a lot of people, when they take a breath, might only get a breath as deep as their chest. It's sort of like when you're at a doctor and they say, take a breath, and, you make sure that they can hear you. But breathing into your diaphragm is going to give you access to control your voice in a much more controllable way. And then it's going to give you access to resonance, which is going to make your sound full and rich. So we have to learn how to breathe from our diaphragm, which is actually the way we breathe as babies. When you watch a baby or an animal who's laying on their side, their belly is rising, their belly is falling. That is a nice diaphragmatic breath pattern. And as we age, we learn to hold our breath, we learn to suck in our tummies, and we stop taking these full breaths. So we sort of have to relearn how to breathe properly to have access to all our voice has to offer when we're using a really great diaphragmatic breath.
And when you talk about practice, how much time are you talking about? If you're telling a client, here's the amount of practice you're going to have to do between our sessions, what does that look like?
Ideally, it's daily, and it can only, you start with 5 minutes. So you start with 5 minutes of practicing this breath work, learning how to take that breath deep into your belly. And then we might add the next week, adding a really nice sigh and sound. And so however much work you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. But if you can at least give yourself 5 minutes a day when we start with this breath work to learn how to do it, because it's not easy. It doesn't come, even though it's natural, it doesn't come naturally to people. We kind of have to retrain our bodies. So if you could do it 5 minutes a day, I think you're going to see the benefit after a week. And then the following week, we introduce something new. And so maybe you work on the breath work a little less and you work on the new technique a little more till it feels comfortable in your body. Ideally, you're working 10, 15 minutes a day to create new muscle memory. And again, the more work you put into it, the greater the reward.
I heard someone compare it once to learning an instrument, right? Doing 15 minutes a day is going to have much better long-term benefit for you than cramming in 2 hours on the weekend.
Right, right. Yeah. I mean, you have to feel it in your body. I mean, this we're talking about changing the way you have probably done things your entire life. So it's not going to happen overnight. I mean, you have to retrain both your brain and your body to a new way of approaching being in front of people, a new way of breathing, a new way of speaking, a new way of highlighting words and sentences with your voice. It's all going to be new. So it's going to take practice and time.
Have you had any success stories where people came back to you and said, wow, I really was doubtful, or maybe not doubtful, but I have been surprised by how much this has helped.
So I had one client who this I mentioned him earlier who was intimidated by his fellow panelists, and I think he was a little hesitant, but after the presentation that we were practicing for, he emailed me immediately. He was over the moon, and he had a sense of confidence that I don't even think he expected to have. And so that was really, really nice. I mean, he came in obviously without much confidence, but to see the other side of that, to see him feel so proud of the work he had put in and then the performance that he gave at his fireside chat was great. So yes, I mean that is one individual I can think of that it was wonderful to see what a change it made for him.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like I'm exaggerating or it sounds hyperbolic to say it can be life-changing, something as simple as understanding how to breathe. But I have really seen that in some of my clients, just saying, I don't think I've ever taken a real breath before.
Yeah.
And that relaxation that comes with it and the quality in their voice. I mean, I've had clients who've said, wow, I don't think I've ever heard my real voice before.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah, so many people are used, you can tell when someone's nervous when they're speaking because like that's not their voice. Their voice sounds a little high, because they're so tight, they're not taking a full breath. And so to go from that to having this wonderful, rich voice, if you can get someone there, I mean it's wonderful. It's amazing.
It's wonderful to watch.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We have the coolest job in the world. to get to see
It's
someone
it's very neat.
kind of own the room
Yes,
after.
to give somebody confidence or help somebody find confidence in themselves, I guess is really a better way of putting it. To help somebody find confidence in themselves, that's a really magical feeling.
The voiceover work is so interesting to me because you only have your voice to communicate excitement, inspiration, whatever it is you're trying to express. How do you, what did your background in doing voiceover work and commercial work, where maybe we don't see you, we only hear you,
Yeah.
what did that teach you? What kind of understanding did you come to after doing that kind of work?
Well, I don't know that it's much different from acting because even though you're just using your voice, when you're in a booth recording, you're still using your body, right?
Mhm.
So you're still using your whole self to convey a message. But what we do with our body comes out through our voice, right? So in terms of helping clients, it's a great reminder that when you just have your voice, how quickly or how slowly or what pitch you say something at informs what the audience is hearing and what you want them to take away with it. So it really is a powerful way to teach somebody about pace, about emphasis, about pausing to let a really heavy idea land. Our voice can do so much with just the nuance that we add to it in all those various different ways: pace, pitch, volume, pauses, emphasis. Like we can affect a story using all of those aspects. And we alluded to this earlier, but I think for most people, when you're telling a story, you use all of those things. You speed up the boring parts, you slow down the dramatic parts, you pause for the laughter. But when it comes to presenting, again, nerves can get in the way, and all of that goes by the wayside. So we have to remind people when we talk, our face is engaged, our pitch is engaged, our hands are engaged. We are engaged because we have something to say in a way that we want you to hear it. And so I think that's what voice work does.
It's a great reminder too for, let's say you're leading the meeting virtually and you're screen sharing. Just because people can't see you doesn't mean you should stop using the body, stop engaging the body and facial expression. Like you
A
need it
hundred percent.
almost more.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's no joke. I mean, and I'm sure you've seen recordings of voice actors in the booth. They're not sitting down with their legs crossed and their arms in front. I mean, they are using their
Right.
whole bodies, right? I mean, when you're excited, your whole body is excited. So you can't really convey that with your voice unless you're using your body. So I think that's the important message behind voice work is it is your voice, but you still need your body.
Yeah, I have seen those videos that you're talking about, and the actors look crazy, right? They're just in
Right.
a room with just them and a microphone, moving like they're in a room full of people,
Yeah.
and it creates an incredible performance. I can't
Right.
imagine them being able to do that if they were just
Yeah.
seated, arms crossed. So
Yeah.
it is interesting to me when I see presenters from the business world who
Right.
are leading a meeting that's virtual and they're screen sharing, where they're just kind of like seated behind their desk and, hunched
Yeah.
over their desk,
Right.
no facial expression, and it comes through.
Right. I mean, you have to be engaged if you want people to be engaged with you,
I love
right?
that line. Yes.
It's
Right.
true.
It's a it reminds me of an old interview adage, right? You have to be interested for people to find you interesting.
Yep. It's a
Yeah,
two-way street, people.
as a coach and kind of your philosophy of coaching and how you
Yeah.
tailor your coaching to different clients. Um, you describe your style of coaching as being really supportive and non-judgmental. What does that actually look like when someone's doing something that they find genuinely uncomfortable?
Well, first of all, I would like to think that I facilitate a really supportive environment because I know how vulnerable people feel when they are in a position where they're doing something that they don't feel confident about, right? So I would be mortified if somebody felt uncomfortable to do something in front of me. That being said, if they were, like if I'm doing a Zoom session, I will tell them what to do. I'm like, if you don't want me to watch, I won't watch. I
I'll
completely
close my
understand,
eyes.
right? I'll close my eyes. I'll turn my back in person. I'll turn my back if you feel silly. But I would hope that I make it comfortable enough of an environment where I will do the exercise first. I will show you that I might look silly, and I'm okay with looking silly because this is a completely safe environment. I really cultivate sort of a world where I hope that it's safe to explore any of these exercises, knowing that it is not going to affect me one way or another. I am here to help you, and that my goal is to make you feel comfortable. So I would hope that they wouldn't feel comfortable, but I would work really, really hard to make sure they know that there's no judgment ever coming from me.
So I honestly, like, not to make a pitch here, but that's why I think coaches like you, like the coaches that we have in our company, can be such an added value to a company because we are neutral parties. Like
Yeah,
going to your HR department to get coaching on, or whoever you have, maybe going to a boss or a manager to get coaching can be really intimidating, and some people just
right.
won't do it, or they've gotten feedback that, I don't know, maybe felt like they were being judged. And that's, I think, a difficult position to be in within a company. Whereas they bring in an external coach, we are completely neutral. We have no skin in the game about, playing any kind of power games, or like, there's no judgment with us. We are just trying to help them identify what their strengths are and lean into those, figure out where the opportunities are to get stronger. And we're trained in this. We can help them. We can support them. We can give them unbiased feedback. And sometimes it's really helpful because we are lay people. We don't know a lot about what their company does.
Right.
So we can give them honest feedback like, that doesn't make sense to me. If you're talking to an outside party, you're using too many acronyms and too much jargon, and the story doesn't make sense to me. So there's a lot of value in having someone like you, this kind of outside eye, provide the coaching, provide feedback for them, because it's so untethered from any kind of consequence at work.
For sure. And really, I want you to succeed, right? I want success for you. I as a client, that's all I want. So not only is there no judgment there, I want you to succeed.
And you celebrate those successes
A
with
hundred
them.
percent. Yes, it's really exciting. Like I just said, I loved seeing how confident my previous client was after his presentation. He was over the moon. He texted me immediately. I was so happy for him. And I was happy that I was able to do that for him, but I was just genuinely happy for him because he was so happy. And that's a great feeling.
I see so often in the writings on success in business conversations around having this COI, centers of influence, or what are they called? It's like putting together your circle, your team. And so
Okay.
often it's a mentor within their business, or someone at least in their field, other experts in their fields. And I always want to jump in and say, we can be a piece of that.
Right.
Having a performance and presentation skills coach can be so valuable. It's it's not unlike an athlete, a pro athlete, a pro pitcher has a pitching coach throughout
Right.
their career,
Yep.
because that's someone who's there to keep an eye on the things that this coach knows that this athlete's been working on. They can support them, they can give them feedback, and it's all about helping make that pitcher successful. And
Yeah.
in a way, I feel like we're kind of that, we serve that same kind of purpose. We're only doing it to help them be successful. That's our
Right.
only goal.
And we're going to see things that other people aren't going to see, right? And there'll be whatever changes we're going to coach them on will be effective, but and they might their peers may notice the change, but they wouldn't have known how to tell them to get to that point,
That's a
right?
really good point.
Yeah. So they might notice that something is lacking in their peers' presentation skills, but they wouldn't know how to frame it. And I think when you have a coach, we're going to be able to see it, and we're going to be able to guide you in a way that's going to give you an effective policy, effective way to change it.
Such a good point. And one of the notes that I hear someone tell me that, oh, I got this feedback that I need more energy.
Hmm.
And that one makes me a little bit crazy because I think the intention behind it is good, but the word is very abstract actually. And sometimes can be less beneficial than you would think. Because when someone says, "Oh, I need more energy," then they typically talk faster, get louder, and those
Right.
things combined makes their pitch go higher. So it's, and then they're still not giving the kind of delivery that whoever this well-intentioned person was hoping
Right.
to get. Because you're right, they don't have the background and knowledge to really give you insight into how to make the change.
Right. Energy is so subjective. It could be your monotone, so you don't have any variation in your tone. Energy could be you don't have a collapsed chest, you're kind of hunched over, you're not really talking loud. Energy could be any version of anything, right? So you're right. The nuance is important. And somebody telling a person they need more energy is not an effective way of changing their presentation.
Now, I find sometimes we're translators.
Right.
A client will share the feedback that they've gotten, and then we try to piece together, okay,
Yes.
what do they really mean? What are they seeing that makes them feel that way about you? And it's those things that you're describing. Maybe it's monotone, maybe it's a lack of facial expression, maybe it's
Right.
that they're not taking up much space, they're not very animated
Right.
physically. It could be any of those things.
Right. And the second they present for us, we're probably going to be able to figure out and transcribe what has been told to them. So I think that's a great way of describing it as translators. Yeah.
You just mentioned having them present for you. Is that
Hmm.
something that you encourage your clients to do?
I don't do it for the first couple of sessions just because I want to create this idea of leaning into learning how to breathe. I want it to be more about that one change because it's such a big change, learning how to tap into the breath work. And so I don't want to distract from that exercise. I want them to really hone in on that so that when we get to the presentation portion, which is usually 2 or 3 sessions in, it's like, okay, now we know how to breathe. Now we know how to access a more rich vocal quality. Now let me hear what you have to say. And then we can work on the more nuanced stuff in terms of presentation techniques, sort of adding in emphasis, intention, gestures, taking up space, all of those things. But I want to really do the foundational stuff with breath first. Now, I have done with a couple of clients where we'll do one session on breath work and they'll say, look, I've got a presentation in 2 weeks and I am super nervous about it. And it's like, you know what? We tailor our coaching to you. So I've given you an intro to the breath work. We'll come back to it. Now show me what you've got and we'll start working on it. So I will be super flexible based on a client's needs. I like to start with the breath work, but then based on when they're presenting next and what they've got on their plate and in their mind, we can tailor the sessions for whatever fits their schedule.
That's nice because you don't know what they have going on when they first come to us and what is the most high priority thing that they have going on. We want to make sure to support them in that.
Right. Like if anxiety is their biggest priority, then breath work 100% is the most important thing. If if they're being heard, if they have great stage presence, but they don't have a clarity in their message and their delivery is muddy, then okay, we can skip over the first few breathwork sessions and really dive in on the message, and then we'll come back to the breathwork because it's a really important piece of this. But yeah, depending on what their immediate needs are, I'm going to make sure that we try to get to those needs first.
I really like the flexibility idea and kind of meeting the client where they are. I don't ever want someone to think that we just, it's this cookie cutter system. You
Right,
go through step one, step two, step three. I mean, of course, there are foundational steps and strategies that they need to understand. But as you said, we kind of take them where they are
right,
and the
right.
feedback that they've been getting and what their priorities are. But sometimes I
Exactly.
find that a big part of what we do is helping them build self-awareness.
Yes. Well, yes, and that goes back to the imposter syndrome thing that we started at the very beginning. Often, like I was saying, they are not aware that that is what the self-doubt in their mind is, right? So, identify, okay, you don't have confidence, you don't feel like you belong in the room. How can we change your internal messaging? What can we do physically that's going to sort of trick you into believing that you are actually deserving of the role that you've been given? So, yes, meeting them where they are is hugely important.
For anyone who's listening who recognizes themselves in this conversation, but hasn't taken a step yet or doesn't know what to do next, what kind of advice would you give them?
Well, I would say number one, you're not the only one. I mean,
Oh, that's
just from
great.
what I know of all the clients that I have worked with, somebody is suffering from some sort of anxiety slash imposter syndrome out there. You are not alone. It is a it's a hugely common problem. And I love to help people get on the other side of that. So if working with a coach would benefit you, which I think it would, I would encourage reaching out to our company and signing up for a session to start the process.
Where could people find you and work with you?
So if somebody wants to reach out, our website is jennysteck.com. And I am one of many coaches at the company who would be happy to help you begin your journey to have a more confident and clear approach to speaking.
Is there anything else that I didn't cover? Anything just kind of on your mind that you wanted to share?
Well, the only thing I think I would want to share with this idea of imposter syndrome, I think the reason it resonates so well with me is because I suffer from imposter syndrome and have my entire life. I was a high achiever in school. I was a high achiever post college life. And with every single job I have ever had, including this one, I have second guessed whether or not I deserved it. And
Wow.
that's why when I hear people battling with this thought problem, I want to help because I wish somebody had pointed it out to me earlier. I wish I had trusted myself more. I wish I had allowed myself access to confidence. I might have attributed a lot of my successes to luck or just being in the right place in the right time. And I have never been good at believing I belonged right where I was. And so it really resonates with me. When you reached out to me to join the team, like I said earlier, my first thought was I have no business coaching executives. I've never worked in a corporate environment. I've never been in a room full of executives. This isn't an environment that is naturally a fit for me. But the more you and I talked, and the more I realized that we have a set of tools, especially for training people with voice and presentation, that most people don't have. We have these tools, and I want to be able to share these tools to help people find their success. So, again, imposter syndrome is super, super common, and and it resonates so well with me. And that's why I want to share what I know to help people get on the other side of this feeling of self doubt.
Thank you so much for spending time. It's such a pleasure to have you on the team, to get to have these discussions with you. And I'm just, again, thrilled that you said yes. And
Oh,
the clients that have been working with you echo that. So thank you.
well,
Thank you for your wisdom and all of your talent and your empathy for
well,
these
thank you.
clients. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And I have loved chatting about all this with you.
Thanks so much for joining me on Speaking of Talking. If you loved this episode, I'd be so grateful if you'd leave a review, share it with a friend, or send it to someone who geeks out on voice just as much as we do. For more tips, tools, and behind-the-scenes goodies, head to the show notes or visit us at jennysteck.com. I'm Jenny Steck. And remember, your voice isn't just how you sound, it's how you show up. Own it, trust it, and let's keep talking, because we've got a lot to say.